Well, blessed Monday to you as we come in with your daily encouragement. And we've been talking about work, and now we're going to end our section here on evening prayer. And what Dietrich Bonhoeffer has been talking about is our life together, both in prayer mainly, but also in work and all our other relationships. And it also deals with each time of the day that we are called to be together. And so he focuses now on the ending of days, which in the season of November is also the beginning of days. So it is a both and. In fact, the Hebrew day begins at an evening and then goes on to daytime. So it's just kind of a different perspective than what we usually anticipate. We usually like to think day beginning at sunrise rather than at sunset. And so he regards an evening prayer. We have yet to say a few words in regard to evening prayer. This is appropriate place for the common intercessions. After the day's work, we pray God for the blessing, peace, and safety of Christendom, for our congregation, for the pastor and his ministry, for the poor, the wretched, and the lonely, for the sick and the dying, for neighbors, and for our own folks at home, for our fellowship, when we have any deeper sense of God's power and working we have in this hour, when our hands are laid down their work and we commit ourselves to the hands of God, and when we are more ready for prayer of blessing, peace, and preservation than at the time when we are on our activity ceases. When we grow weary, God does his work. Behold, he keepeth Israel. He shall neither slumber nor sleep. Psalm 121. Now, where I'd like to go with this, and getting off from where Dietrich Bonhoeffer talks about, there has been a rich tradition of evening prayer found in our Western Christian heritage and also throughout Christianity, way back to even the 200s. And it is found in our Lutheran book of worship or evangelical Lutheran worship. It is called evening prayer, or some would call it vespers. And there are two things that are really interesting about vespers that I think he's highlighting here. One is what we'd call the common intercessions for all things and for all people, and who is our model to let all things be. Now, to contrast that, mornings begin with kind of empowerment. We're about ready to make a difference in the day. The sun has risen, and now we are going to rise and do our work and contribute to the world and the kingdom that God has given us. So it's a much more empowerment. Evening is a time for letting go. And the great example of morning was Zechariah empowering us to be like John the Baptist to prepare the way of the Lord. But in evening, it is Mary and her great hymn, the Magnificat. My soul magnifies the Lord. And what does she do? She's simply noticing what God is doing. That's what is so beautiful about the prayer. She's noticing God is raising up the poor and is casting the powerful from their thrones. And this is, I think, more particular. She is noticing that you and I are part of this work. Now, it's not so much to notice it as far as empowerment is concerned, to go and make a difference in this world. It's part of noticing that you have been part of this work, and now you need to let God do what God needs to do. In fact, one of her famous lines, let it be according to my word and my will. Let it be according to your word and your will. That's what letting go means. And so she is inviting you and I to sing this song of my soul magnifies the Lord and all that the Lord has done. And then the other part of this Vesper tradition is what's called the litany. Now, if you are a person for conciseness, the litany is not one of your favorites. It's one of those that you read through and you maybe get a little tired even halfway through or a quarter of the way through, because it lists almost every circumstance, everything of life. It is not there to be concise, it is there to be thorough. In other words, it is about as outward focus about all the things that God's in charge of, but also inward focus of all the things we need to let go of. Not that they are unimportant, but because they are all God's and we are going to rest. In fact, in many ways, going to rest in evening, and this is very common in the final prayer of the day, which is found in our Lutheran Book of Worship called Compline or Complete. It compares our going to bed as our preparation to go into the grave at some point in our life. Well, should I say, some point in our existence where we had to relinquish of everything and put it into the hands of God. And so evening prayer becomes a model for us, both with the example of Mary and the litany prayer, to just hand it over. It shows those things that we should value. Yes, that's what prayers usually do, but also the things that we need to let go. For Mary, in many ways, gave birth to Jesus, who she brought forth into this world. And in that famous sculpture where she's holding the body of her dead child, had to let go of him in order for Jesus to complete his work. And so it is for you and I that in many ways participate with other Christians. In fact, Mary is considered the mother of the church. This is where our Roman Catholic friends have her as the chief intercessor for the church. We can have an interesting discussion about that some other time. But if anything, she is the chief model of what the church needs to do. Yes, be active in the world during the time when it is day, but when night comes, it is time for us to slow down and let everything be handed over to the hands of God, both by singing the Magnificat and also by praying the litany, so that we can put all of those things in God's hands. And so I think this is a great model for us as believers on what we are to do in our daily walk, how we are to live, and yes, how we are to let go. God bless you today. We trust that these continue to be words of encouragement. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.